Hello devs, welcome back to Small Square. In this video, we will add sprites for our tracing item and add button to our inspector window to generate path. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know that this tutorial, along with many other exclusive projects and resources, is available on our Discord channel. It's the perfect place to engage with our community and access exclusive content. Just head over to our Patreon to get instant access. If you find value in what we do and want to see more content like this, consider supporting us on Patreon. Every contribution helps us to keep creating and sharing knowledge with our amazing community. Alright, let's go back to our video. First, let's add a background for our scene. Right-click on the hierarchy window. Create an empty game object. Name this one to background. Reset the transform. Let's add a component. Type sprite renderer. Click this radio button. Type right_bg. Set the scale X and Y to 1.2. Back to hierarchy window. Create an empty game object. Name this one to tracing field. Reset the transform. Set the scale X to 1.46. And for our Y, let's set this one to 0.72. Let's add sprite renderer component. Change the sprite. Type blank. Change the order in layer to 7. And let's change the color. Back to hierarchy window, let's create an empty game object. Name this to mask remover. Let's create a canvas on our hierarchy window. Name this one to buttons. On our inspector window, change the render mode to world space. Drag the main camera to event camera. Set the order in layer to 20. On our red transform, let's set our pos X and pos Y to 0. Let's set our width to 15. And for our height, let's set this one to 2. Now right click to our button's canvas. Let's create an image. Name this one to next button. Let's add a component. Type button. Now set the width and height to both 1.55. Change the source image. Type next. Change the anchor to middle right. Duplicate this next button. Rename this one to prev button. Let's change the source image. Type previous. Let's also change the anchor to middle left. Right click on our item trace game object. Let's create an empty game object. Name this one to item. Right click on our item game object. Let's create an empty game object. Name this one to item hole. Set the scale X and Y to 1.2. Let's add a component. Type sprite renderer. Change the sprite to letter A hole. Set the order in layer to 10. On hierarchy window, right click to our item game object. Let's create an empty game object. Name item guide sprite. Set the scale X and Y to 1.2. Right click on item guide sprite game object. Let's create an empty game object. Name guide 1. Go to inspector window. Click add component. Let's add sprite renderer component. Set the order in layer to 8. Go to your project window. Open the sprites folder. Let's rename our alphabet folder to item trace sprites. Open the alphabet folder. Let's open the A folder. Select guide 1 game object. Drag the guide 1 to 2 sprite to our sprite renderer component. Let's create another 2 guide. Change the sprite for second guide to guide 3 to 4 and also for a third guide. Now let's align our position of our guide sprites. After aligning the positions of our guides, let's create a C# script that will generate path game object. Go to your project window, open the scripts folder, open the main game scripts folder. Let's create a C# script here. Name this to path generate handler. On hierarchy window, right click to item trace game object. Create empty game object. Name path handler. Now drag our path generate handler to our inspector window. We also need a script that will handle the size of our background sprite. Name this one to background size handler. Select the background game object. Drag the background size handler script to our inspector window. Now let's open all the scripts. On your background size handler script, we have here a method that will handle for resizing the background game object to fit the screen. In here, we have set a reference for our sprite renderer component attached to the background game object. If our sprite renderer component is empty, then this method won't do anything. We also need to set the initial local scale of the game object by its default. To set our initial local scale, we have to set our X, Y, and Z to both 1. By getting the width and height of the sprite using the sprite renderer component, this helped calculate the scaling factors to make the background game object fit the screen. To get the height of the screen in world coordinates, we have to multiply the orthographic size of main camera to 2. We need also to calculate the width of the screen in world coordinates. These will be our scaling factors needed for the background game object to fit the screen. After that, we have to set our local scale of our background game object to the calculated scaling factors. To execute this line of code, we need to call this method to our start method. On our path generate handler script, we have added a C# attribute which will indicate that this class can be serialized. We have also declared 2 variables here. This method will handle for creating or generating the line path. We have added here a compiler directive which the line of codes inside the scripting symbols will only run to our Unity editor. This will create a custom inspector for the path generate handler class to the Unity editor. We have to add an editor class that is derived from editor that provides custom inspector GUI for path generate handler. To ensure that the default inspector for the path generate handler class is drone, we need to add the base implementation of the onInspector GUI. This retrieves the target instance of our path generate handler script. This will check if the create line button is clicked on the inspector window. If it's true, then it will call our generate line method. This will check if there are any changes in the inspector. If it's true, then it will apply or save the changes on the properties to the serialized object. Go back to Unity Editor. On project window, open the prefabs folder, expand the item trace game object, remove the path that we've created last video, and let's create another path. Change the order and layer to 10. Now open the prefabs folder again. Drag the path game object to our prefabs folder. On hierarchy window, remove the path prefab. Select the path handler game object. Drag our path prefab to our line path prefab. Drag the item trace game object to our spawn point. Now let's check if it works. Click this create line button. Select the new created path game object. Now let's try to move any of the red points. As you can see, we can move the points. And if we add a new point, let's hold down shift. That works perfectly. On the next video, we will add a collider for our generated path and add another button for removing generated path. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below. Share with anybody you believe this might help. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to be notified.